Aloha and welcome to Aloha Alive, the heart of Hawaii. I'm your host, Auntie Dawn O'Brien, and today I'm super excited because I get to reunite with one of my star students in my speech class. Welcome to Frank De Gracia, a Christian couples counselor, and he's going to be talking about Marriage 911. As we get started, though, I have to say one of my favorite worst memories of all time was during our Pac Rim Bible College class. There's 5 different types of speeches that I teach. One of them is the persuasive speech. And Frank brought in a balut to our class. If you do not know what balut is, bless the Lord. You should thank God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, everybody who's up there. Balut is fermented rotten chicken. And Filipino people, God forgive me because I love every other kind of Filipino food except for balut. Frank is a young college kid, brings this stinky thing into class, and myself and the other Caucasian person in the classroom were fighting for that trash can, trying to throw up. True story, right?
Yeah, persuasive. You still remember it.
Thank you, Frank. I'm so proud of you. You turned out amazing.
Thank you.
You graduated from Bible college where you were also serving as a reservist.
Yeah, Army reservist.
That's amazing. Thank you for serving God and country.
Oh, thank you for support.
Then you go on, you get your counseling degree, right? You have a master's. And then you're also certified in the drug treatment area.
Yes.
You work at Hinamauka full-time.
Correct.
And you're a husband. Want to give a shout out to the wife. I
Come
love
on,
your wife.
Julie. Let's go.
And 4 sons now.
Yes. You know, I always say I have 4 sons. It's not that I love my sons. I really love my wife. So, yeah.
Well said. He knows who to take care of because when he's an old man, guess who's going to be taking care of him?
Exactly.
Julie. I did meet the baby, though. He's
Caleb.
so handsome.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is a cutie pie.
He's a little snuggle bug. He was super good. I saw him at a meeting, and he was just such a cutie at school. His wife is a teacher at one of our biggest and best elementary schools in the state of Hawaii. Really, I love you more than I love him, Julie, so if you're watching. But I love that you gave the shout out to the wife. I'm going to read a quote as we talk about Marriage 911 today. And I feel like we need to get straight to it because you and I have both been in ministry for decades. One of the top requests in prayer is for marriages.
Yeah.
And I mean, every week, I'm talking about not just people in the congregation or in the community. I'm talking about pastors.
Yeah.
So here's the quote. Marriage is the grave of love. People fall in love. They have stark, raving, mad romances. They get married and then it all dies. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it does, unfortunately.
And what seems to support this old quote that I saw, and I've heard many times, is the rate of divorce in the United States. I used to hear it was about 50%. It's dropped since then. It's now at about 40%, right? I'm just rounding off to keep it real simple for secular sources. In the church, for Christians, the rate of divorce is 30%. Have you heard that as well?
I've heard variations, but I've heard that it's as well. Yes. It's unfortunate. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And for Christians, the number is coming up, while for world divorces, it's going down. So for those outside of the church, it's coming down. But for those in the church, unfortunately, you would think Christians would stay married because we say that God created this sacred covenant of marriage. And I'm not bashing, I'm not throwing rocks here, but this supports the statement that marriage is the grave of love. This is a lot, Frank, but what's going on?
Yeah, that is a huge question, and it's a problem for us, really, because what I've seen is, I remember when not when I stepped into your class, when you gave a talk at chapel about Wonder Woman. And you gave this talk about how the enemy, through the analogy of Terminator, and how the enemy has a target on our back. And essentially that is exactly what's happening in the marriages and the family, where the enemy knows and recognizes that if he can target the family unit, the man of the household, the marriage, if he can target that, then he can affect generations to come.
Come on.
And we know the Bible talks about Adam and Eve and how the enemy came in and sin was from all of that and just the generational curses, where in psychology we call that generational patterns.
Wow.
And so
Good to know.
generational patterns that has not been resolved over time. And because of these generational patterns that has not been resolved, let's just say, if when a client comes to me and I ask them, I do an assessment, what brings you here and what's the presenting problem? And they'll say, oh, drugs and pornography, etc., and all these things. And then I'll ask, tell me about your parents. Oh, tell me about your grandparents and your great grandparents. What
Wow.
I'll see is a thread of these things happening from time to time and progressively getting worse over
Oh,
time.
wow.
And so if there's a divorce that's happening now, it's probably because of unresolved issues in their grandparents or the parents and the grandparents. It just exacerbated or it just got worse over time, and then we're still seeing it. So when Christianity, when Christ comes into a life, awesome, they're forgiven of their sins and they're redeemed, etc. However, those generational patterns
Yeah.
are still occurring inside of them. And so that's why when Romans talks about be transformed by the renewing of your mind, it's so essential.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, Jesus in my life, pop, we good.
Yeah.
No, there needs to be a sanctification process. There needs to be, that's why the church, the Bible talks about don't forsake the fellowshipping of your brethren. It's more important. It's not just cool. We talk about the Bible, let's pray for another, but
Right.
it's how the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron.
Wow.
It's where the Bible talks about having to not forsake the fellowshipping of the brethren, because when you're with other brothers in Christ, you get to see new, more redeemed patterns of how to do life,
That's good.
better ways of how to be a husband
Yeah.
versus what you've learned from mom and dad
Or grandpa and
or
grandma.
grandma and grandpa. The old saying, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, is so true, because they never learn anything different. You only know what you know.
Right.
And so, okay, I accept Jesus Christ into my life. I said the prayer. I'm going to these classes and Bible study. However, what's important is they be exposed to other men and women of God so they can see, what is it like?
Yeah.
What is it like to be a man of God, a husband, or woman being, what is it like to be a woman of God? Because they don't know any different.
It's good. And like you said, and just to recap some of the highlights there, and I love how you said it, Frank, you don't know what you don't know. Kind of sounds like a Portugueseism that I heard from the Dilemas. But honestly, I grew up in a family where I thought the silent treatment was normal until I went to my friend's house after school, and they were like making dinner together, the mom and dad. They were setting the table, and I had never seen that in my life in
Yeah.
my house.
Yeah.
I was like, these people are aliens. They're not regular. But to your point, I didn't know what I didn't know until I hung out with a healthy family that was having healthy relationship with healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a healthy family, you're going to have an unhealthy one that has unhealthy mentality and unhealthy behaviors.
Exactly.
The silent treatment was normal. Swearing was normal, etc. Right? Drawing away. We're going to talk about some of the Gottman principle. And I love that you said, instead of drawing away, draw closer to one another in
Right.
conflict,
Right.
which is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I'm like, forget you, right?
Yeah.
So use a nice F word. Forget you. I'm walking away from this, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Thank you for saying that, Frank. So what's going on is a whole lot, and it doesn't have to be, it sounds like, and I'm going to ask you, it doesn't have to be transgenerational patterns or transgenerational curses. Now, I'll interject one thing and then come right back to that. Is no, it doesn't have to be. But I love that you said that you asked during the assessment, which by the way is free at your clinic. I
Yeah.
looked at that 4-letter F word real hard because I was like, that's my favorite 4-letter F word. Anybody who's in schools like Julie knows I talk about that one in front of little kids. I love free and I love food. Put them together. Free food, double Jesus jackpot. But I looked at that. You do free assessments with people at the your clinic, which is called Enjoy Life Hawaii Counseling. And you said you ask about the parents' relationship and you ask about the grandparents. I was sitting here listening to you say that, Frank, and I started thinking about my own. And like I just said, silent treatment, swearing, heavy duty, unhealthy conflict. And then I started looking at, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to my family, but let's look at the reality.
Yeah.
Is even my grandparents, there was a lot of unhealthy things, but they lived in a generation at a time. People didn't get divorced. So it manifested in unhealthy other ways,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So now Don O'Brien is making some familiar because, and here's another quote I often say, when you come from a broken home, broke feels like home. So I'm in a healthy relationship, but it feels boring because I'm not screaming at this guy,
Yeah.
or I'm not silent treating him. I'm not blowing up his phone with 30 messages saying, "Where the F are you?" Right? So does that sound
Yeah,
normal?
absolutely. Sounds really normal. I know in a lot of Christian families, because I see mostly Christian couples because they know my background and I'm referred through from a lot of churches. And I see a lot of Christian couples. And the thing is, they got this new habit of going to church and doing Bible studies. However, the home is still broken. And so it's important, again, having to go back to this thing about
Wow.
recognizing the importance of being amongst other brothers in Christ so that they're exposed to these things. We call it exposure therapy. Okay, so you need to
Wow.
go and get exposed into this. The thing that you're very afraid of, take a step. What does it look like to take a step closer to that thing you're afraid of that you know it's good for you, but because of whatever trauma in your past is like, oh, like with a lot of PTSD clients that I work with, because being in an environment where it's crowded. So I expose it to them. Okay, you're afraid of going to Pearl Ridge, so why don't you just park in the parking lot and see what that feels like? So exposing them to healthy things that they're not accustomed to, just seeing what it's like, and they're like, I don't know if I can be in that kind of environment. I don't know if that's for me. Well, they just sit with it and just observe. What do you think? Let's process. Let's talk about the thoughts that come through your mind.
Yeah.
And so it is very true to your point.
I love that. Thank you for affirming that. I love that you walk step by step, like let's say in your PTSD example, and that was a real human being. And I certainly appreciate our warriors who are in the armed forces. Pray for them all the time. Pray for the reservists. Thank you. But it's about starting with small steps
Yeah.
towards healthy new behaviors, because perhaps going into a mall will be too loud,
Yeah.
too much sensory input, right? Too much stimulation of visual, what I'm hearing, what I'm smelling. There's too many people, and
Yeah.
this is going to recall an act of war, right? Where there's things flying. So thank you for doing that. The other thing that I was thinking about when you talked about those transgenerational patterns or curses, as we say in Christianity, is that if we don't deal with sin, it's going to get worse. So the cycle of sin is not just outward where it starts to go worse and worse. Like I start with pornography that's other sex porn, right? Like I'm looking at guys, and then I'm going to look at same sex porn. Then I'm going to start looking at, and probably I should watch what I say because algorithms are going to strike that. So my editor will help me. Thank you, Clint. Is then I'm going to look at child images, right? And then it goes to even more depraved. So the cycle of sin is outward and downward. And you just kind of alluded to that when you said we're going to look all the way back because it gets worse and worse. And what may have kind of been there with your grandparents gets a little bit more outward and downward with the parents, and then it's going to be with us.
Right, right. And the thing is, the hope in all of this, it's called multi-finality. So think of it like an airport where the planes can go in either direction. You have an airport where this is where let me just kind of put it in real life where we all have this sin and the divorce is inevitable or whatever.
Right.
But even if you have a broken home, a broken past, the finality, the direction is up to you. It's your choice.
Oh, wow.
Right. So the finality of things, you can say, I'm going to repeat these generational patterns
Yeah.
and continue to this abuse, continue with all these things.
Yes.
Or I can decide, you know what, I need to change this pattern in my life because I see my grandparents, my parents, and it all busts up. And so I need to change this trajectory and says, you know what, I need to go seek therapy. I know I
Right.
get accountability. I need to go to the church and get some counseling, some pastoral help, etc. Just so that way, so we can go. We have the choice.
Right.
We have a choice. So there is hope. But the first step is recognizing that there are these patterns in my life.
Right.
And it's important to sit with someone like myself to help recognize those things. And instinctually, a lot of us already know. My mother like this, my grandma, everybody, we know. It's just we have to come to the realization that, okay, what do I do with this? Because
That's
this is
good.
wrong. I don't want this to continue to repeat in my kids.
Right. And yet we said we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Now, so to help us know what we don't know, what does to get a baseline definition, what does a good marriage look like?
Yeah. So fortunately, there was a psychologist named Dr. John Gottman, his beautiful wife, Julie Gottman. And in about 40, 50 years ago, they created Gottman Institute. And what they did in Seattle, Washington, is they created what they call a love lab. And in this love
Wow.
lab, they had about a few thousand couples. They come through this love lab. It's a bed and breakfast kind of thing. They had the room, the bedroom, the living room, etc. But
Wow.
they had a camera in each of those rooms, so pretty comfortable, I guess. But they had a couple in there, and what they did, and they also measured their heart rates,
Mm.
and they just set cameras up and watch how they interacted. What they found, so to answer, before I answer that question, what they
Mhm.
found was the couples that ended up in divorce and dissolvement showed four big signs. And he calls it the four horsemen. He's
Mhm.
Jewish. And so he talks about, the end times. And so, as we know in scripture, the four signs of the end times: famine, rumors of war, antichrist, and such. And so he says, here's the four things that you see. If we see this, four horsemen in a marriage or in a relationship that is not mitigated,
Mhm.
then there's a 90% chance of divorce. So he
What?
called it 90%. He can guarantee, if I see these four things running rampant in the marriage and they're not taken
Wow.
care of, there's a 90% chance of divorce. And he's, again,
Holy
about
smokes.
4,000 couples, 40 years of doing this research. And so the
That's
first one,
very extensive.
yeah, and it's true till today.
Wow. Okay, yeah, bring
Yeah.
it. What are the four
So the
horsemen?
first one is criticism. Criticism is basically labeling. You're stupid. You're dumb. I can't believe you're such an idiot. So those kinds of things, criticism. The second one is stonewalling.
Oh,
Stonewalling is a strategy a lot of us men use because we've been taught in life, suck it up. There's no crying. So
right.
we stonewall, we go quiet because we know as men, if we were to really say what we want to say, we might hurt our spouse in a
Mm.
sense of emotionally, verbally abusive. So we go quiet, we shut down, we don't say anything. And now the wife is led to believe, oh, I guess you don't care about our relationship. And so she gets more mad, but the man more closes down and
Right.
stonewalls. So stonewalling. The other one is defensiveness.
Oh, wow.
Defensiveness is making excuses, justifying your behavior.
Mhm.
Well, what about you? What you never do this, and you always do that. The other thing about defensiveness is the victim standpoint, where the victim says, "Well, you're right. I'm always the person wrong. Yep, yeah, always my fault." Just kind of basically just throwing the white flag, but taking that is a defensive stance, but victim mindset.
Right.
And the last one is called contempt. Now, contempt is very condescending. It's the
Mm.
rolling of the eyes. It's the like, oh, here she goes again. It's the I'm better than you, smarter than you, more prompt than you, whatever than you. And it's very condescending.
Wow.
So if these four are rampant in a marriage and relationship, it's inevitable. There's a 90% chance of divorce and dissolvement.
Ooh, and recap them again. What
Yeah.
were they?
So you have criticism,
Criticism,
stonewalling,
stonewalling,
defensiveness, and
defensiveness.
contempt.
And unfortunately, all four of those sound way too familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And those were great examples you gave. And that's a 90%.
90% chance.
Holy smokes of heading towards divorce
Yeah.
court.
Yeah.
I've heard of the Gottmans. I love them. And you use the Gottman method. They are highly effective
Mm-hmm.
counselors, right? And
Yes.
you're a Christian counselor for couples, and that's all couples,
Yeah.
but you know and base your work on the Bible.
Right.
And then you use a lot of other great studies like this one. Now, how long, if we start using the Gottman method or they come to you and they're looking at, you know what, let me also back that up before I say if we're coming to you for counsel, Frank. One of the things I hear a lot from wives, because of course I'm a woman and I go to a lot of women's ministry events and I'm in prayer circles, is, well, he's never going to come to counseling with me. What could you help me with that or help them with that? What do we do other than, well, I'll pray for you?
So your question is if the woman wants their husband to come to counseling and the husband refuses to, yeah, that's a tough one. Unfortunately, it happens a lot because, if a husband is not ready, then he's not ready.
Right.
And until there comes to a point when the marriage is falling apart, it's like you're trying to tell someone to do something when they're not ready to do it. And
Right.
so when they come to that, we call it preparation stage, where they're preparing and they're kind of ambivalent or 50-50 and thinking, should I? But I really don't want to, but I should. And then something tips them over when the woman, the wife would like threaten, well, if you don't go, then I'm gonna divorce you. When those kind of threats happen, and the husband, okay, all right, let's go, let's do
Right.
this. And so, unfortunately, it takes those kinds of threats from the wife, or in the husband, because sometimes in your point, the wife is like, I don't want to go, you need it,
Right.
not me.
Right. And I would compare it this way, Frank, from what I've seen, and please, you're
Hmm.
the qualified counselor. Uh, it's almost like, you know, if I gain a ton of weight, I don't really want to go work out, right? I know I should. Instinctively, I know I'm in a bad space with this. But until the point where I'm like, none of my clothes fit, I'm now wearing like size 45
Mm.
instead of my size 12s like normal. When I get to that crisis critical point, then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to have to start
Yeah,
changing my diet and changing.
right.
And that's where a lot of marriages, unfortunately, have to get to that crisis critical
Yeah.
point where almost one of them is walking out the door. We are not recommending this at this moment, but that seems to be the typical pattern. Thank you for being honest with that. Can the woman or the spouse who wants to come, even if it's the husband, come to counseling on their own? Because I would think that there is some
Yeah.
salvation in that. There's some
Absolutely.
sanctification.
Absolutely. Because again, let's talk about the generational patterns,
Come on.
right? And so
Yes.
if they're continuing to do the same thing, it's like I remember Pastor Ed Savoso once said, if you always do what you always done, you're gonna get what you always got. But
Come
if you
on.
do what you never done, you're gonna get what you never got. And so
It's good.
somebody has to change this pattern.
Yeah.
And so either the wife or the husband will seek a therapist and says, my husband or my wife doesn't want to come. So they do the work on themselves.
Yes.
And so what happens is when they do the work on themselves, what happens is, let's just say the woman goes to therapy and the husband refuses to, like in your example. And so now the woman begins to learn some coping mechanisms, coping strategies. When he starts doing his thing that snaps her, she instead of reacting, she's responding in a
It's
healthier way.
good.
Right, the husband will say whatever criticisms and stonewall or whatnot, but she would respond in a healthier way that
Yes.
maybe allows him or causes him to say, "What just happened?
Yeah.
That's different." She
Right.
doesn't respond like that. And so that's why it's important to, like, somebody need to do something different in this relationship.
Right, exactly. Thank you for saying that. So there's goodness to it.
Yes.
I've noticed in my trail of tears, right, is not just the American Indian thing on the continent, but in my own relationships, had been attracted consistently to, and it broke down every time, a certain type of male. I
Mm.
didn't know that going into it. I'm a smart girl. I mean, I obviously wouldn't start a relationship if I knew it was going to crash and burn so horribly. But I look back at over this track of fiancés and I think to myself, Dawn, if you open your eyes and look at the pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for saying that gently. And then to say, I'm trying not to pick the same, but I'm also, when I am dating, I'm not going to respond the same because I confess to you that in my house that I grew up in, highly dysfunctional, and there was the stonewalling, there was all four. There was also a lot of the swearing, the unhealthy conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was activating it.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank, I didn't mean to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've been a Christian since I was 13 years old, but suddenly I looked like my mother and my father fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I was swearing, I was angry, I would do the silent treatment, I would turn away
Mm-hmm.
and I would drop it cold. I was like, I don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I was going to grow up to become my divorcing parents, but I had a divorcing spirit. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
saying I started really tuning into your IG. I did. I started watching Jimmy on relationships. I don't know if
Yes.
you, and he
Yep.
loves the Gottmans. And so
Yes.
I started getting into the Gottmans. And that's why I asked you to come and be on the show because I really felt like God led me to say, hey, I want to get help for other people who come to me for prayer. Go get Frank because Frank
Mm.
really is a qualified Christian counselor
Mm-hmm.
with a good
Mm-hmm.
heart. So thank you for coming and thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
That's where it was coming from. Okay, so can we? Here comes a hardball question, a fast and furious, but I
Okay.
did list it on the questions before, so don't be scared. Um, can we save marriages from divorce court? Do you think?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
So you brought up Jimmy. He talks about the Gottman. The other thing he also talks about, but not enough, is emotion focused therapy. That's another thing that I specialize in.
Wow.
And when it comes to marriages, and especially when these marriages are on the brink of divorce, the biggest thing in all of this, right, the patterns and all the stuff that we talked about earlier, the biggest thing is they both don't feel safe to really share what's on their heart.
Hmm.
That when the wife causes to rise up and says something,
She gets
she
triggered.
gets triggered, the husband shuts down, and when he
Hmm.
shuts down, he's afraid to say something. He doesn't want to say something because he feels unsafe that if he does, she'll
Hmm.
get more triggered.
Right.
And so there's this dynamic of going back and
Right.
forth. They don't feel safe. And so the thing about, so going back to your point of your question there, is that therapy, what it does, it helps facilitate this safe conversation
Mm-hmm.
where now there's a third person they have to introduce into this conversation, so that way the wife can really articulate what's on her heart in a more de-escalated fashion, and the therapist will be able to help the husband facilitate a conversation that is. And guys, we don't know our words, we don't know how to, we're not all, I'm speaking generally, but a lot of men don't know how to articulate emotions.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I say, what does that feel like? Sir, what does that feel like to share that? Well, I don't know. I feel bad. Well, let's talk more about that. What is that? What does bad feel like? Well, when you say bad, what does that take you to, in your history, in your mind? When she said that, what happened inside of you? And
Mm.
so, as a therapist, we help the man articulate their emotions,
That's good.
and it's a big cry session. I've had couples on the brink of divorce and helping the man to articulate what is really heavy on his heart. And the
Mm-hmm.
wife was like, I didn't know that I was going through. That's what you're thinking of. All
Right.
this time I thought you didn't love me.
Right.
All this time I thought you didn't care.
Yes.
And so thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Because now I realize that you don't hate me, you actually do love me. And so
Right.
I've had a lot of these conversations. So that's why
Wow.
having someone who understands these generational patterns
Yes.
helps facilitate that. So now this couple can walk away from therapy and saying, you know what? I just thought she hated me. I just thought he hated me.
Right.
But we're realizing here we actually do love each other. It's just we're just missing the boat. We're missing the cues. We're just not really knowing how to articulate what's really going on underneath.
So good, Frank. And like you said, and I've seen it many times because Jimmy on relationships, he's an IG and I watch him on YouTube, but he does a lot of the role playing. So
Yeah.
he'll do the husband or the boyfriend and then also the wife or the girlfriend. And he shows, like you said, the example is where she's lashing out. And oftentimes women typically are very emotion articulate, I'll say. And so we can express these things and we're putting it out there. And then we start slamming into them and listing every single thing since 1982 that
Right.
you've been doing, right? I mean, men know sports stats. We know all the relationship stats. And we will remember every single one of them. I heard a joke that women make great archaeologists because we know how to dig things up, right? And that's why I love your IG, side note, because Frank posts so many funny things. And so it lightens up some of the harshness.
Yes.
That it can feel hard when we're dealing with our emotions and our heart or the broken home issues. But then you lighten it up and then we come back into, wow, this is a good nugget, which is also why I like Jimmy on relationships. So back to that thing where the woman is laying into the guy and we're calling out, we're crying for their attention and for connection. And then often the guy in response, he doesn't want to hurt her, whatever it is, he stonewalls, like you said. Then more so we're trying to reach out and make even
Right.
more. And I'm going to raise my volume. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to use words that don't appear in the Bible. I'm
Yeah.
going to call you some names,
Yeah.
right? And so you're saying walking through that with a counselor, whether you go as a couple, which would be awesome, or as one half of that couple is hugely helpful.
Absolutely.
Now, let me pivot and add to that, Frank. What I've noticed is, somebody just gave me a couple of great books. One of them was Sacred Marriage, and another one was by Dr. Ornish on intimacy and love and how we really need intimacy and love to be fully successful, fully blessed humans.
Yeah.
And we all kind of know that. My point is, what I enjoy about you using the emotion-focused therapy, you're using the Gottmans, I just need somebody to listen to me right now.
Yeah.
I just need somebody to sit there for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And oftentimes, Frank, I'm finding that a lot of women that I sit with, and these are married pastors or people in ministry, that's all they really want.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that, do you find that?
Yes, because, and I say with a lot of pastors too, and as pastors, being a pastor for 20 years, is that here's the scripture, here's the antidote to your problem. And as men, let's fix it. And when I talk and sit with women, wives, there's like, my husband just wants to fix it, but I don't want to fix. It's that joke we always hear, and we always hear it in marriage conferences and such, that women just want to be heard. And I always tell men, ask her, does she want to be held? Does she want to be heard? Or does she want to be hugged?
That's good.
And so,
That's so good. Do you want to be held, heard, or hugged? Because
Right.
that's a big distinction.
yes.
Big difference.
Yes. And so, and the thing that I have to teach men and help men to work on is this skill called empathy. And I tell them I play a game in my mind whenever I started doing this is, what is the emotion that my wife is trying to share with me right now? And even if I get it wrong in naming the emotion, so I call the game, Name the Emotion game. So she's sharing with me something and I says, babe, that must feel ugly and hard. Ugh, right? She says, no, I was kind of excited actually. Oh, tell me more. I was off on that one. And so, but what it does is trains the man to empathize with the woman.
Mm.
And I do this exercise in my workshop where I have the woman share for 2 minutes. What do you feel a champion in, and what do you feel like you were just was chaotic in life? And men just sit there and listen. Just sit there and listen. And
Wow. For
after the
two
two
minutes.
minutes, right? And I'd ask the man, what was it like to hear your wife talk to you for 2 minutes? And a lot of men like, I just wanted to fix this and do this. And I asked the wife, what was it like for you to share with your husband like this? And she said, I felt heard.
Yes, there it is.
I felt heard.
And
Yeah.
and I think I can speak for the women because I'm a woman. It's just needing to feel heard.
Yes.
Like I'm just trying to lay it out there. I don't need you to reach over and fix
Yeah.
it or try to tell me something or send me to a link or send me a meme or a reel. Just sit and look at me and listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unadulterated attention is the
Right.
highest compliment.
Right, because you'll say something like, the man would say, "Why don't you do A, B, and C?" And the wife would be, "I did do A, B, and C." Well, what about X, Y? I did do X, Y, and then now we're back into this cycle. I call it
Yes.
the negative cycle of conflict,
Wow.
right? And so now we're into this conflict, and why were we fighting about again, right? And at the end of the day, she just wanted to be heard, and so
Mm,
men just kind of missed the boat on that, and so
wow.
that's important. It's important to learn, and I give this book called "I Hear You." I don't forget the author, but it's called I Hear You. And it's not by a therapist. It's from a guy who's gone through a lot of therapy, but he breaks it down into just normal language for men to read and just say, what does empathizing with your spouse look like? And it's important. Empathy is a skill that a lot of husbands would need to learn to create this emotional safety in the relationship.
And I'm going to advance that just one step more is I saw it was a comedy reel, but it was about a pastor saying, whatever you give a woman, she multiplies it tenfold. So, you give her a seed, she's going to create a garden. You've seen this reel. But if you give her trouble, you're going to get tenfold back. I love that you say that about men learning empathy. I think there is a definite pattern. We're not trying to be sexist or racist or anythingist here, but there is a certain level of truth and reporting that needs to happen. And so many women would be so grateful for that
Yeah.
gift of empathy. And like you said in your example with Julie, you guessed, oh, were you feeling, well, that felt ugly and harsh for you? And she's like, no, I was actually really excited. But the excitement for us also as women is, wow, you want to talk about
Yes.
it. You're opening up by asking a question, which Jimmy on Relationships says, oh, yeah, so tell me how that felt. And a lot of women are like,
Yeah.
wait, where's my husband? This
Right.
is awesome, right?
Right.
You see it. You see the woman open up because whatever you give that woman, and I have to say, as a woman, I am going to give it back to you tenfold. So if we want to start playing attitude games, oh, I am your mama drama queen.
Right.
Boo. I got this. I will win this game. And then we get back into that negative
Yeah.
cycle. Talk to me about EFT, which you said is emotion focused therapy.
Yes, EFT, motion focused therapy, was created by another psychologist called her name was Dr. Sue Johnson, and basically it's how can you be vulnerable with your partner, your spouse. The word vulnerable in Latin is to be wounded.
Oh, wow.
Powerful. It's that knight's term when when you took off your armor. When you took off your armor in front of your enemy, there's a chance to be wounded. So that hence you put the armor on so that you wouldn't be vulnerable, you wouldn't be wounded. So what happens between couples and their spouses is that I'm going to put my armor on so I don't have to be vulnerable, so that you don't wound me. And so now we get kicked up in this negative cycle.
Yeah.
Can we have conflict is actually healthy. If it's healthy, it draws you closer. It draws you closer now because you're able to take off your knight's armor and be able to have these vulnerable conversations where we move from, they call it a secondary and primary. Secondary, think of it as an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is those secondary emotions like mad or upset. But underneath is all these softer emotions that we men don't know how to communicate, like embarrassed or
Wow.
ashamed. And so, or I was scared. If I
Right.
tell men in emotion focus, when I'm doing therapy with men, like, did you feel scared? Scared? I don't feel scared. I never feel scared. But then when we get talking more about it, I ask, what were you afraid of when she said that or gave you that look? I was afraid she was going to leave me. You know, I was
Mm.
ashamed because it made me feel less of a man. I wasn't being a leader
Wow.
in the home. And so there's this deeper, softer emotions
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, when I would ask, what was different in this sharing with your wife? And the husband would be like, I've never said those words before. I've never shared my fears. I never told her I was ashamed of
Oh
being
my
a less of a
goodness.
leader. And that's why I would shut down because I felt in my mind I
Sure.
was failing, or I would just lash out, or I just walk away, or I just retreat to my phone.
Yeah.
And I felt ashamed. I felt like I was failing. These soft
Mm.
emotions. So emotion focused therapy allows us to articulate these softer emotions that are
Yeah.
underneath that waterline, underneath that tip of the iceberg.
Right.
And now the wife is really saying these things like, I've never heard him talk like this. I've never realized that was really going on underneath all of that.
Frank, I love that you just said all of that. I actually want to cry hearing that,
Yeah.
there really is the softer emotions for men. And I know growing up in Hawaii, right? Like
Yeah.
local boy action,
Exactly.
right? You got to have that stiff upper lip in the Irish culture. My last name is O'Brien, and you got to take your licks and just keep going. And that's what we kind of, in a sense, beat into our boys.
Yeah.
Don't show your
Mm-hmm.
emotions. You either feel mad, bad, or sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we don't have much emotional language beyond that. But allowing our kane, our men, to have those experiences and to be the vulnerable
Yeah.
warrior
Yeah.
when you walk through that door. And even if, I'm in a relationship where I allow that man, we're not married, but we're just to be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And to not have to have the armor on, because
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a swing at you or
Right.
stab you or send a fiery dart to your head.
Right.
I had a gentleman friend tell me recently, he sent me something on Instagram, and it was about a professional athlete. And this girl who was dating him, a woman, she said, I was dating him. I thought, it's all about the score. There's all these other women in his life. And he had chosen me to be his girlfriend. And she was this beautiful, articulate, smart, wonderful woman. You could tell. But she said, at one point, she said, oh, I'm going to be the hard to get one. I will always be
Mm.
your challenge.
Mm.
And he looked at her and he said one word. Why?
Mm.
I spend a lot of my time out there trying to do my job, trying to be the professional, being on media, doing all these things. Why do I need to come to this,
Yeah.
to home, to my safe relationship and
Yeah.
feel unsafe, like I have to keep working?
Yeah.
Why? And she said he didn't even have to explain all of that, but she got it. And
Mm-hmm.
it stopped right then and there.
Wow.
That even for a man who is a hero to many on the
Mm-hmm.
media, in sports, accolades, looks like he has it all together, doesn't want to have to come home and keep fighting.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
And I tell men, like, what? Put the armor up when you're with the guys, because
For
we need
sure.
the armor up emotionally when they got the military or construction, whatever job, especially, and women too. You got to get the objective done, accomplished, and like that movie. There's no crying in baseball, of course, because you got to get the job done. However, when you're at home, the armor has to come off. The
Yes.
walls need to come down because that's where it needs to show.
Wow.
And we call it co-regulation,
Yes.
where the Bible talks about in James, the book of James says, confess your sins to one another so that you may be healed. Healing happens when you're able to confess your sins.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, babe, I just was so embarrassed at work today. I was so, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed or ashamed. And when I'm able to share this with my wife,
Mm-hmm.
there's this healing that happens inside of me, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not she's going to bring resolve to my problems, but I feel that she's on my side.
Yes.
She's available. She's responsive. She's engaging with me, and the same with me to her. When she comes home from work, what I've learned, right, because my mistakes as well, being a kindergarten teacher, she's coming back and just drained from the day. Oh, babe, my work and this and that. I'm not coming back. Well, you should do this and that. She's gonna what? I'm a teacher. You're not, right? What are you doing, Frank? But if I just, how was it? Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh.
How did you
Really?
feel?
Yeah, that
Right.
must have been tiring, exhausting. Oh my goodness. If I was you, I would have pulled my hair out. And she's like, yes. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's this closeness that we're having just by empathizing, just by allowing her to take her armor off
Yes.
and being safe with me.
Wow. So it's co-regulation and
Hmm.
we're a team.
Yes, exactly.
And so let's swing to that a little bit. And you started touching on it, Frank. You're exceptional. Thank you. Everything so far, I'm just gobbling it up. I feel like a spy in the promised land. I'm still single, but I'm learning how to do it different because I have been engaged 3 times. I've been the runaway bride 3 times and always backed off the line. But what I hear in you is hope and that God's promises really are true.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you glanced off of, and I started saying that, was conflict.
Mm-hmm.
All I had ever seen in my family was divorce and a lot of mean fighting. Like, not we're on the same team. We're going to address a few things so that we can go back out and keep charging the field and keep playing the game or living life. But it was now I'm going to start fighting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will win.
Mm-hmm.
And the object or the goal of arguing is not I'm going to win, but how do I win you? Talk to me about what is healthy conflict.
Yeah, so healthy conflict, and according to John Gottman, so let's talk about those 4 horsemen, right? So if there's criticism, then the antidote to criticism is having what's called soft startups. Soft startups, you probably heard, and with your background in communication, is where you use I statements. I feel about what, and I need, which is the request. Not that you're going to honor my request, but at least I'm going to start this in a soft, gentle way, instead of criticizing you. You never this, and you never, and I read your mind. I know what you're thinking, right? And so instead of that, it says, I was kind of hurt when I thought I heard you say this, and I would appreciate if you'd say this differently. It presents a softer way in starting this up. And then the next one is contempt. With contempt, I do want to address that because with contempt, Dr. John Gottman says when you have a contempt mindset, there's a 95% of divorce more.
Holy smack.
95. So 90% of the 4 horsemen, but if there's a contempt, which is I'm better, there's a 95% of divorce with
Wow.
if contempt is ruling the relationship. And so if we start this contempt and you're my spouse and I'm looking down at you know what, you always this and you always that. I don't know why. And so if I had that mentality,
Wow.
this relationship is definitely going to end.
It's
And
doomed.
yeah. So the antidote to that in contempt is what's called appreciation.
Oh, wow.
Simple, right?
Wow.
And so it's not in that moment that's
Mm-hmm.
going to heal the moment, but it's the small things that matter along the way. That's a line phrase that Dr. John Gottman really wants to coin, is that small things matter.
What?
Small things matter. It's because if I say it along the time, just throughout the relationship, you know what? I really appreciate it when you did that. The contempt now we begin to even the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Now where I don't look down at the person or my wife, now we're looking at each other. I appreciate when you did this. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for doing that. When you I really that mean a lot to me. It's
Wow.
a small things appreciation. Small things that matter also includes if you were to hold the hand of your partner and he holds his hand out, right? It's those bids for affection, those bids for connection. If you start a conversation and he's like, I don't want to hear it, then you lose that opportunity for that bid. But
Mm.
if you start a conversation, he engages with you, it's a small things.
Right.
It's a small things along the
Well, it's
way.
like being at the dinner table or going out on a
Yes.
date and that person is constantly checking their phone
Yeah.
or, right,
Yeah.
like, what is so important? Like, I
Right.
get it if you're a neuroscience or you're the general or some kind of surgeon, but otherwise, why are we constantly on the phone?
Yeah.
I'm reaching out for that connection. Like you said,
Yes.
that bid for connection. Please reach back and
Yes.
connect with me.
Yeah, because you can either turn towards and continue the conversation. You could turn away and just like totally ignore what you're saying,
Mhm.
or I could turn against you, where you
Oh,
come for a
wow.
connection. I'm like, what? I don't got time for this. We got stuff to do right now. And
Wow.
so there's those small things. It all matters. And so a lot of couples, they think, man, the husband will think, I'm going to plan this amazing getaway weekend at what such and such hotel, and it's going to be an amazing time, and it's going to make everything better. No, it's just going to, yeah, for that bit, but then you go back to those old cycles again.
Right.
And so don't think the great getaway weekend is going to resolve all those weeks and months of those bids that you missed.
Right. So I spend one weekend at the spa at
Yeah.
Aulani with you and then
Right.
51 other weekends crying
Exactly.
into my pillow
Yeah.
saying death by a million paper cuts,
Yeah.
right? Like, please stop checking your phone all the time.
Right.
I feel really wounded when you call me names,
Yeah.
right? Or you transgress my boundaries, etc.
Right.
I love that. And
Yeah.
then just to recap, you said there's the turn toward,
Yeah,
there's
turning
the
away,
turn away, and the last one I didn't realize.
turning against.
Holy
Yeah,
smack.
yeah.
which is the worst one of
That's
all.
yeah,
But
absolutely
the last two are very damaging.
right. Right.
So we don't want to turn away and we don't want to turn against. We definitely want to turn toward your partner and keep trying to work it out.
Yeah, it's that word that we use, being
Yes.
present, being attentive, eye to eye. When I do couples work, especially my workshops, I do look at your partner eye to eye, knee to knee kind of thing. Because it's
Wow.
so easy to just go side by side and just talk just like this,
Right.
which I say turn your chairs towards each other and have this conversation, stuff they've never done in years, you know? But to your question
Wow.
about how do we mitigate, how do we talk when we're in this conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's the I statements. And then I also do this thing where I have them practice listener speaker. And, I'll give them like a pillow. Okay, whoever has a pillow is a speaker. And then the listener, before the listener shares, the listener has to summarize
Mm-hmm.
what he heard or she heard the speaker say.
Right. Right.
And so it's that simple, basic communication.
I was going to say it's basic
Yes,
listening, basic speaking,
yes,
but a lot of that gets
it
lost
gets lost.
in the years or in all of the things that are going on in the
Yeah,
busyness of life, right?
yeah,
And then you're sitting there holding a pillow going, wait, I have to remember what they said so I
yeah.
can paraphrase it back to them.
Yeah. The foundation of every relationship over the course of time is friendship.
Wow. Say that again.
Friendship is
The
the
foundation since
foundation of
the
every
creation of
relationship. Yep.
relationship is friendship.
Yeah. In Dr. John Gottman, he has this analogy of a house, the
Mm-hmm.
sound house, the seven principles. And, we want to have the amazing dreams that as a couple we want to get to and do all these things for God. But we can't do that if we don't have a good friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of couples who are still together because they know that divorce is wrong in the eyes of the Lord and they got kids, so they don't want a divorce, but they're not friends. And so they live a parallel marriage under the
Yeah.
same roof.
I read a statement you had on your website where it says, we are like roommates with a few privileges. And that's a sad statement of affairs, but I know too many of those. And
Yeah.
like you said, well, it's wrong to get a divorce, or I'll wait till the kids grow up and then we'll get the divorce. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
This is not God in his fullness about the promise of marriage. Jesus never told his bride, well, we can live together upstairs, but we're
Yeah.
not going to cross over and be
Yeah.
together. I'm never going to eat at your table.
Yeah, which is why I love when at a lot of marriage conferences they emphasize date nights, which is huge, right? And it doesn't have to be some big budget things. However, so date nights are important. In addition to that, I talk about having what's called love maps. Back in Kapolei, before Kapolei was Kapolei, it was sugarcane.
Yep.
Right now, that in the 90s and such. Now, Kapolei, if you have it, back then, we didn't have GPS systems, right? And if it did, it was very expensive. And you had these maps you had to, as a military, you had to land navigate from point A to point B and all these kind of things. But now, if I was to take that old school map that I had in 1990 of the Eva Beach Plains, and I was to take it to Kapolei now, like, wait, what is this Ho'opili? This is what is this? There's no such thing. In the principle of that, same thing with love maps is when June and I first got together in that first year, I knew she liked the color purple. I knew she liked these kind of clothes. I knew she liked this kind of ice cream, etc. Her friends was such and such. And then now, because we've been married at this time about 19 years,
Wow.
if I say,
Congrats.
oh, your favorite color is purple, you like this ice cream, your good friend is such and such, is like, oh no, I don't hang out with her anymore. I like this other color. I need to update my love maps with her. And so, again, the small things that matter, paying attention to. So, who's your good friend now? What do you like to do now? What kind of food do you like to eat now? So, knowing those small things along the way, updating those love maps is what I always encourage couples. So it's not just the date nights, and we don't do date nights just so that we can eat, talk stories, and watch a movie.
Right.
But it's an opportunity to have conversations between you and your spouse
Yeah.
to update those love maps. To talk about, yes, the dreams and the goals and all those things, but also the things that you talked about when you're dating, right? Those love maps that needs to be updated.
So still pursuing each other. And
Exactly.
it's funny because we'll get the newest iPhone, but we didn't update with our
Yes.
partner. So we're still
Right.
operating with the iPhone 1. And it's like, yo, we got a ton of new
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
going
yeah,
on
yeah.
right here. I love that, Frank. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize time is flying by because I'm consuming all this really great information that's practical. Now, talk to us before we step out. And don't worry, we have time. I know you have time. But it's important for me to let everyone who's watching know, and please share the word. Frank and his team, I know you have a co-founder over there at your wonderful clinic, but you guys do something that's called the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's a short seminar. Either I could go for a couple of days or you even have it for a couple of hours. Is that
Yep.
true?
Yep.
Tell me, what is the 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work?
So going back to the foundation of that sound house relationship theory created by Dr. John Gottman, the foundation is friendship. And again, talk about the love maps. So friendship is the foundation. The next principle there is managing conflict. Friendship and admiration. Sorry. So that whole friendship is 3 levels. You have the admiration part, admiring each other. Being fond of each other. What I love about you is that kind of statements. Having to talk about the turning towards and not turning against. So I talk about those things.
That's huge.
Yes, exactly.
Huge.
Because a lot of couples just turn away because they just don't know how to talk about
Right.
that. And so having friendship, having this fondness and admiration is the second principle, turning towards. And when you have those 3 principles, you have what's called a positive sentiment. Of course, when you have
Wow.
a good friendship and you're
Right.
fond of each other and you have this
Engaging,
engagement of each
right?
other, you can be positive. If those things don't happen, it's a negative sentiment.
Right.
So those 3 principles are important. The fourth one is managing conflict. So because eventually the whole what's called limerence, the honeymoon stage, it kind of fades. And then now we start getting into some arguments. How do we do that? So when it comes to conflict, then we start talking about how do we compromise? So we do a thing called compromising circles where we talk about what are the negotiables and non-negotiables, what are the topics and stuff like that. And so we talk about how to repair. Repairing is huge. I always say repair is greater than resolve.
Wow. What do
Repair.
you mean by that?
So repair great. So 70% of conflict are unresolvable between a couple, right? I like blue, she likes pink. What do we do? Right? One person is Democrat, the other was Republican. What do you do? You know, and so it's unresolvable. So how do we compromise? How do we work through that? I don't have the answer, but when couples come to see me, I don't tell who's right and who's wrong. I
Right.
don't care about content. What I care about is how you argue, how a process is greater than content. So going back, what is repair is greater than resolve? We can't resolve it. So if we can't resolve it, how can we repair things? How can repair? If I was to say something, let's just say I said something to Julie and it was wrong, it was bad, and I was off on that, and we get into our own negative cycle. Repairing means it's like that director on the movie set. All right, cut. Let's take 2.
Oh, wow.
And so is these repair statements that I give couples. One of them, my favorite, it's like, hey, can I do that again? Right? Or I came off wrong. I'm so sorry. Let's try that again.
So
You
you
know?
literally take, in golf terminology, a mulligan,
Exactly.
a
Right.
do-over,
A do-over. And
second
let's,
chance dance.
yes, exactly.
Wow.
Repairing is so greater than resolve.
I never even heard of this. I love repair because I think we all mess up and we always say, I need a second chance. I know with Jesus, I've needed like a second zillion, uku, million,
Come
billion
on.
chance.
Right.
And if we can extend that to the person that we cherish the most in the whole wide world,
Why not?
and for many of us, it's your spouse and it's your other half.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. Repair is better than resolve. I'm a big believer, Frank.
Yeah.
How do you learn all this stuff, by the way?
Oh,
I mean, I know you have a master's degree. I know you're certified, but you're just a wealth of really good wisdom. And it's simple.
it's very, that's why I can remember it. It's simple. I like simple.
No, we all love simple because, and I was speaking earlier with some other people and Every Day Better, and he kind of does the same approach. I don't know if you know Eric Yamashita, awesome guy, West Side pastor, dad, and he does the same thing. And he spoke to a few things that you brought up right now, also with men needing affirmation. Just simple things like, honey, I appreciate that you took the trash out.
Yeah.
Honey, I love that you gave me 5 minutes of eye contact, right? Which might kind of freak him out and break the eye contact. But nonetheless, let's say it, right? So he spoke to that, the validation of men that seems to have disappeared in this culture. And yet men really, according to Ephesians and a lot of other great books in the Bible, as well as a lot of other books on marriage, say, we need to affirm our men and give them respect. And it's almost a culture that's being desecrated and denigrated by the devil.
Come on.
Strategically.
Yeah.
But what I really was driving to with that point, with what he said, is every day better is bite-sized chunks of goodness. And you're doing it similarly with relationships. Because at this point in humanity, we see a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. The devil has come to steal, kill, and destroy. And he's especially hammering at marriages. He's even aborting marriages before they even start. We see so many of our couples, myself, the foremost of sinners with 3 engagements broken, that don't make it to the marriage line because that's the devil aborting it. And that was the principle. This is coming back full circle to what I said. And when we were in Bible college, the Terminator comes from the future and he comes back to the present, knowing the future calling on that couple, knowing the future call on their children or on their children's children to the 3rd and the 4th generation.
Right.
And so he comes back in time to abort that before it begins. And what Frank and I are saying, and again, Frank is a qualified, exceptional counselor. What we're saying is, let's give Jesus love a chance. Let's give marriage and sanctified relationships a chance because you're worth it. Because we're worth it.
Yeah.
And because we are the bride of Christ and we represent, as the church, the greatest union in all of existence.
Amen.
Okay, that was kind of a big statement, but I really believe it, obviously. Frank, would you add to that as we begin to bring this in for a landing?
Yeah, I want to say, that, we need to fight for our couples. We need to fight for our relationships.
Thank you.
My motto, the thing that I always love to say is, if I can help a couple, I can help a family. If I can help a family, I can help a community.
Come on.
And even before that, if we can help the men, as the Bible talks about the men as the leader of the household, and just helping the men understand that you have a mantle of leadership. Hey, mom and dad, you're not just doing mom and dad stuff. You're creating a generation of leaders. And so let's work on this dynamic. Let's
Yes.
work on what it means to have a healthy marriage. I mean, the more than having a huge church and having these huge ministries or huge organizations, what's going to create that hugeness and healthiness is the marriage dynamic.
Yeah.
It's going to birth these children with who are going to be powerful entrepreneurs and powerful
Yes.
whatever government leaders and pastors and leaders,
Missionaries, and
missionaries,
everything.
exactly.
Moms, dads, every single thing that God has called us to do will be powerful. I'm sorry to
Exactly.
interrupt.
So I want to just kind of, just add to your point is that this is why after 20 years of ministry, I felt God called me to do this is because the thing that was always on my calendar when I was in ministry was meeting with a couple, meeting with this couple and that couple, ministry leaders and not ministry leaders.
Right.
Everyone is hurting.
And then meeting with the youth and the
And then-
children who are
exactly.
suffering from hard marriages in their home,
Yes.
right?
As a substance abuse counselor, I was meeting with youth and I would ask them, so where did you learn marijuana and alcohol and all that? Oh, my dad gave it to me. Oh, I see my mom and dad go after
Wow.
this. I had a youth who was smoking marijuana at 5 years old because dad didn't want to deal with his noise and stuff like that because dad was on his marijuana binge and meth and whatever kind of thing. So now this young man, 18 years old, and just marijuana just running through his brains and messing him up. My heart broke because it more validated inside of me. I says, I need to really make marriage a ministry, make marriage therapy my priority.
And you went after the mom and the dad, the husband and the wife, but you're also certified as a counselor at Hinamauka,
Yeah.
as we said, which helps our youth, which
Yes.
helps the children. We're living in a time of dire need for both. And I just want to thank you. Previous Pastor Frank, he's now fighting on whole nother level with our marriages and our children. And you're part of, again, enjoylifehawaiicounseling.com. That's Enjoy Life Hawaii Counseling.
Yeah.
You have a great website. I was all over it taking choke notes, and then I got him live in person. You also do the 7 principles for making marriage work. And what I loved about that, Frank, one more footnote on it, is you said to me personally, you said, my prayer is that I can offer this to military groups, to
Yes.
churches, to nonprofit organizations. I mean, it sounds like you're going to go and be like at the corner of Ala Park teaching everybody. You just be that preacher on the corner. We got 7 principles right now. Turn toward, turn away, and turn against, right? But that's how much your heart beats for helping marriages, because the devil's heart is to decimate marriages, but the Father's heart is to bring unity and restoration.
Yeah.
and whole homes and holy
Amen.
families.
Exactly.
So thank you for fighting for that in a tremendous way. Can we have you back? May I have you back on Aloha
Absolutely. I would
Alive?
love to.
You are a wealth of goodness. I love your bride, Julie. I love all of your kids. They're super cute. So once again, the contact information. And if you just want little nuggets, like we were saying, of everyday goodness or everyday better, everyday bites, he's on IG, Instagram. And if my Uncle Jimmy can do Instagram and I got Auntie Margie out there doing Instagram, she's in her 93. Okay, you can do Instagram. He is at Frank_couples_counselor. We're going to put that up on the screen and have it in the show notes. That's at Frank_couples_counselor. And he puts up funny stuff, but he also puts up those quick little bite-sized nuggets of goodness for all of us. And then again, the website, enjoylifehawaiicounseling.com. Frank, last question. What is aloha to you?
Aloha, born and raised in Hawaii, the concept that I've always seen is just different cultures coming in and just loving them where they're at. Loving them with their background, their tradition, their decisions, just loving them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what God just exposed me, preparing me for. It says, love people where they're at. It's
Good.
not my job to change people. It's my job to love them and allow the Holy Spirit to do the changes in their life.
Wow. Which is why he has a great counseling ministry and a great career. Thank you so much again. Frank De Gracia, Christian counseling, couples counselor. And again, I like to say the 3 words that I teach at his wife's school and many other schools with Choose Aloha. And he just said it, that we love everyone. Aloha always wins. Aloha always wins. Thanks for joining us on Aloha Alive. We'll see you again soon.